Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So we are going to start right now, and we're going to continue. We did box 15, and we're going to continue with box 16. We're going to continue with box 16, inshallah, and box 17. So boxes 16, 17, and inshallah 18. So with box 16, remember we did a number of things last time, and I thought it would be a good idea to actually have you see some of what I had done, just so that we can actually, be more visual and actually see it. So what you see right here are some of the things, the attempts to make it clearer. So I put them in different colors, just as we did in the other packet. So I put them in different colors and put out the verbs, the past tense and the present and the future tense right there, and indicated with the color of what we're really adding onto the verb in order to see it. And in the imperative form, I also put out and laid out the different forms. So the ones that are if'al in that rhythm, iftah, I put them in orange, uf'al, and the ones that are in this rhythm, I put them in green. So urzuq, unsur, ukhruj, utruk, udhkur, uktub, ufsuq, u'bud, and the ones that are in if'al. And well, I should have colored this one as blue, but idrib, and I guess that one, that was the only one that I had, but that was blue. And for the person slash the subject, the person that's performing the action, in other words, performing the verb, fatih. So it sounds more like the rhythm fa'il. So fatih, raziq, nasir, or Nasir, Kharij, La'in, Tariq, Dhakir, Dhahib, Katib, Fasiq, Abid, Darib. And you could see that when we actually laid that out, let me just do it right here. We would take the original verb. So let's do it right here. We would take the original verb and actually lay it out. So let me right here lay it out. So we would have the fa, a, and la, and then let's say we put the ka and ta and ba. All right, then if we're adding an a here, we're going to add the a here to make this. If we're adding a kasra here, then we're going to add a kasra here. All right, and that's how it will be clearer. So let's do it again. We've got fa and a and la, and we said this would be the verb, and then if you're adding an u here, all right, and then you're adding another dhamma here, let's actually indicate it with the color red. So if I'm adding an u here and I'm adding an u here, whatever verb I get that belongs to that one, I'm going to actually do the same thing. So here we go. We're going to put the verb the, ha, and ba. All right, and here we are. We're going to add that. We're going to add the u, and which is that one, and we're going to add, oh, actually that one is not going to take idhab. This one's going to take the orange one. So we're going to add idhab. That one's going to take a fatha. And here's idhab, not udhab. So, but it's very important to remember that certain verbs do take a different rhythm, like a different wazn. And the best way to memorize them and to learn them is really by memorizing the categories, memorizing these categories, and memorizing the words and what form they take of the adjective slash adverb, or even a sillier name for it is probably the noun of the verb. The noun of the verb, which would be those terms, which is one another word is actually masdar. Another word is masdar. No. All right, so let's continue right there, and we're going to go back to our own we're going to go back to that packet that we were working on. So to continue that same packet that we were working on, we've got same exact idea with the same exact patterning, but slightly different, because you've got right here, we said yaf'ul, or the pattern for that is going to be yaf'ul, and that's why it sounds differently. So we look at the present part of it. The present part of it is going to sound like yaf'ul. So let's look at those words. They're different than yaf'al, but the meaning is absolutely the same. The meaning is absolutely the same. It's a present tense, whether a present tense to mean that I'm doing it now, or to mean that it's going to happen in the future. All right, so here we go. The same exact column right there, the same exact words right there. So the same exact pattern, but the difference is that you would have yaf'ul and instead of yaf'al. So the sounding of it is slightly different. Yaf'al versus yaf'ul. And let's go on with these. So we got nasara yansur. Nasara yansur. Balagha yablugh. So the balagha would be the past tense. Yablugh would be the future tense. Taraka yatruk. Hashara yahshur. So taraka yatruk. Hashara yahshur. Hakama يحكم. حكم يحكم. خرج يخرج. خلد يخلد. خلق يخلق. دخل يدخل. ذكر يذكر. رزق يرزق. Now when we look at these forms, this would be the past tense. So nasara would mean somebody, or victoried, because it's in the past tense. All right, and this one would be the present and future tense. So victoried, and here to victory, or giving victory. Balagha, to reach, or reached, sorry, because it's in the past tense. Yablugh would mean that they will reach or are reaching. Taraka, to leave or left, because it's in the past tense. Yatruk would be leaving. And hashara, to combine, to join, and to bring together. And here, because it's in the past tense, hashara would mean the past. So hashara, united, gathered, put together. So bring together, this, or brought together, because it's in the past tense. In the present tense, bringing together, uniting. And hakama would mean that ruled. So when we look at the word hakama, it can mean to rule or to judge. There's a difference between to rule and to judge, because to judge, you're then giving a final order, because, and hakama, there would be a trial and such. But hakama, and that would mean that judged. This is the past tense. Yahkum, and judging or ruling. So this is the present tense. Kharaja means to exit, or come out. And yakhruj, coming out. So kharaja, came out or exited. Yakhruj, coming out. Khalada, so khalada would mean to be eternal, even though to be eternal is more of, the adjective of it. But here khalada would be the past. So to live forever, but khalada meaning they had lived forever. But of course it doesn't make sense in English, because if you say they had lived, would mean that it doesn't exist anymore. But in Arabic, the word khalada itself actually means to be eternal anyway. So khalada, to be eternal, meaning you were eternal and you still are going to be eternal, because the word itself by definition actually means you're going to live forever. There's no stop to it. يخلد, that they will be forever. So يخلد فيه مهانا, and that they're going to be living in it forever and ever. It still didn't happen, but that's in the future. And خلق, to create. خلق, to create. But you want to know, so خلق would more mean to create something out of nothing. Okay? But جعل would mean that you're forming or reforming something out of a main substance. But خلق would mean created. يخلق would mean creating or to create. دخل, enter. So I got the opposite of, I believe we did kharaja, didn't we? Yes, we did. Okay, so the opposite of kharaja is dakhala. Dakhala, to enter. Yadkhul is, well, actually dakhala, entered. I keep on using two. Yadkhul would mean entering. Yadkhul, entering or to enter. Dhakara, and dhakara can mean to remember and can mean to mention, to utter. And this is really important, because when we say dhakara, it can mean to remember in general, and it can also mean to mention. Okay, so to mention or to remember. Yadhkur, to remember or remembering. So this one, remembered or mentioned. And yadhkur would mean remembering, or, this is for the future, remembering or will remember. Razaqa, to provide. And when we say provide, you're providing different items. Razaqa, provided. Yarzuqu, providing. Now look at the other part, in the other part, which is uf'ul. Remember that that's a rhythm, and based on that rhythm, that's going to be the imperative form. So when we look at the imperative form, it gives us, how do I make from this verb an imperative form? If you're going to do that, simple. Just add an u to the main part of it. All right. So let's just do a little bit of, a screen, just so that we could actually see it. All right. We're going to do a whiteboard screen, just so that we could slightly see what we're talking about in color. All right. We're just going to do a whiteboard. So here we go. And so that we could actually see it. If you could see it, so you've got the fa, a, and la. All right. Fa, a, la. And here we go. So this is the main one. And now we're adding certain things. Now here it's telling us that if you want to make, let's see, if you want to make, let's look at it. All right. If you want to make that verb in the sense of it being imperative, you're going to look at this main screen right there. Okay, so in order for it to be an imperative, let's take an example. Utruk or ublugh. Okay, so we're going to take the word ublugh. Okay, and we're going to use the balagha and ublugh and see what are we really adding onto the main part. All right, so let's see it right there. And it says uf'ul is going to be our example. All right, uf'ul is going to be our rhythm. So let's do it. We're going to be adding. We're going to first write fa'ala again, and we're going to indicate what we're going to be adding. Uf'ul. All right. So what does that mean? Let's put the original verb ta, ra, and ka. All right, now we're going to see what we need to add. So you're going to put again ta, ra, ka, and then you're going to add those additions. Here we go. Utruk. So now it's utruk, and that's the imperative of the original one. And that's the same thing that you're going to be doing to all the rest of them. And then you will have the actual blueprint of what you're actually adding to the verb in order to make a word, whether you want it to mean an order, or whether you want it to mean a future tense, or whether you want it to mean a past tense, or whether you want it to mean the person that's doing the verb. All right, so let's look at it here. And ublugh, so now we're going from balagha to the imperative form. And this imperative form is giving me an order. So now we're here giving an order from the root balagha, meaning reached. So I want somebody to reach something, and I will say ublugh, reach it. Taraka, meaning left. All right, now I want him to leave whatever he's doing. Utruk, now giving an imperative. From the same exact root, you can form different words. Hashara, meaning to unite, to gather. And here I want him to gather or unite, and I will say uhshur. Right? Hakama means to judge. Now I want this person to judge. I will say uhkum. This person exited. Now I want him to exit. I will give him an order. Ukhruj. The person khalada, meaning that they were supposed to live eternally, and I will say ukhlud, and here meaning giving him an order. Khalaqa, created. Now I want him to create, and I will say ukhluq. Dakhala, now you're giving an order. Dakhala means to enter. Now I want this person to enter. Udkhul. Dhakara, and means to remember or mention. Now I want him to remember or mention. I will say udhkur, and giving him an order now. You got to mention it. Remember it. Razaqa, meaning to provided, and now I want him to do that, bring in that, to provide, basically. I want him to provide, and I will say urzuq. Now you're giving him an order to provide. Now the person that is actually doing that, all right, then we're going to say from the verb nasara. Let me just erase everything so you could see it. All right, now from the word nasara, to victoried, I'm going to say, well, the person is nasr. The person victoried. The person supported. Balagha, the person reached. Now, the person that actually reached, that place is going to be called baligh. And we say baligh also for a person that reached the age of puberty. They had baligh, they had reached the age of puberty. And it can also, baligh can also mean, the person that reached the limit of something. So that can also be baligh. So baligh amrih would mean that he reached all the ultimate rules that he wants to do. So not always is it reach the age of puberty, but baligh can also mean that reach the limit, or even can go beyond the limit. Taraka, of course, to or left. Tarik, the person that leaves something. So when we say tarik as-salah means the person that left salah. Hashir, the person that united. The person that united. And hakama, hakim, the judge. So this person, this means to judge or judged. I keep on saying two. Judged, and the person that judges is the judge. So hakim simply means the judge or the ruler. Kharaja, to exit. All right. Kharij, the person that is out. Kharij al-bayt, they're out of the house. Kharij, so the person that's out. Khalada, meaning the person that lived eternally. Khalid, the person that's living eternally. Khalaqa, created. Khaliq, creator. And that's why can't God Almighty have a son? Can he create himself a son? Well, he can't, because if he is a creator, he can't be a creature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is khaliq, not a makhluk. So once you consider that somebody is going to be the son of God, well, then they're not a creator by definition anymore, but they are creatures. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is khaliq. He's the creator, not makhluk. Makhluk would mean creature. All right, let's see. Dakhala, the verb, the past tense of it, entered. So داخل, the person that just entered, the person that's entering, the person that's inside. ذكر is remembered or mentioned. ذاكر, the person that's mentioning, the person that's remembering. ذاكر. So here, the Indians would say Zakir Naik. It's actually not Zakir. It's actually Dhakir. Dhakir. Not Zakir Naik, but Dhakir Naik. But that's a very common thing with Indo-Pak in the sub-Indian continent generally is to flip the tha into a za and the va into a za. But in Arabic, it's actually Dhakara and Dhakir. Dhakir would mean the person that mentioned or remembered. Razaqa would mean or provided. And Raziq is the one that is providing, which is, who's the Raziq? It's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's go for now the other part, which is the trickiest one. And the trickiest one is what we call in masdar. And although, yeah, we did say adjective, adverb, but guess what? A more accurate way of thinking of it, as silly as it sounds, is actually the noun of the verb. So the noun of that verb is basically what we're working on right now, and that would be fi'l, meaning what? So the sound of it is going to sound like fi'l, but remember one thing, we said that there were actually a number of other, let me see if I can actually get it out for you. Yep, we did it right there, and I put it in different forms. So I put it for you in different colors. So there are different rhythms to it called the wazn. The different rhythms to it for that masdar, for the sound, the noun of the verb is like a fi'l, fu'ul, fa'al, fi'l, fi'al, and fi'ala. Guess what? There are actually more than that. And the beautiful thing about Lugha Arabiya is that even though there's more than that, but just from the sound of that rhythm, you can actually come to know what the meaning is. But that's a whole different thing. We don't want to make this too expansive and then get you lost. But that's why, it would be beautiful if we can actually have a Lugha Arabiya class and actually teach the sound of it, like safra, fi'la, and how, or fa'la, and how it actually is talking to a color, or how something is talking about an action, or this is actually called sarf, which means it's very equivalent to the conjugation, like how you conjugate a verb. So then we're looking at how do we conjugate from that verb, from the past tense of it, a noun for that verb, adjective, adverb, / etc. So nasara, and we want to talk about the actual victory. All right, victoried means nasara, but I want to talk about the actual victory, okay? The noun of that verb, the actual victory, and that would be nasr, victory. Balagha, all right, reached, but remember, we said that there were different rhythms or awzan, so we said fi'l, and we said there's fu'ul. Remember that colored one that we did? So let's see. Nasr, that's fa'al. Okay, here we go. Here's one rhythm. Bulugh, fu'ul. But it means the noun of that verb. So balagha means to reach. Bulugh is the actual reaching. In other words, the actual reaching, the noun of that verb. All right. Taraka, left. And tark is the actual leaving. All right? When you tark, it's like, the actual leaving for that item or whatever action you're doing. Hashara, and here we go, fa'al and hashr. Now, hashr would mean the noun of the verb unite. So hashr would be the day of resurrection or resurrection itself. Hukm, hakama, judged. Hukm Hukum is the actual, well, verdict, the final trial and what they reached. So the final judgment. All right. Kharaja, kharaja, exited. Khuruj is just like this rhythm. Fu'ul. Khuruj would be the exit itself. Now it sounds like the exit. Khalada, to stay long. And khulud, again, here's that rhythm again. Fu'ul. Khulud. Fu'ul. All right, now we're doing khulud, the actual part of living eternally. All right, and khalaqa, created. Khalq. Wait a minute, what? Khalaqa, created, and khalq. So what is that going to mean? The noun of the verb created. Khalq, creatures. The noun of the verb created. The noun of the verb. What is it going to be? Creatures. Khalq. Khalq, the creatures or the actual creation as well. So creatures, creation is also the noun of the verb, as silly as it sounds. Dakhala, to enter. Dukhul is entrance. The entrance or entering something, the actual noun of the verb enter or entered. Dhakara, remembered, mentioned. Dhikr, dhikr is the actual remembrance. So here we go. That's why we say, engage in dhikr. What dhikr? Engage in the verb or in the action of making dhakara, and the actual action of making remembrance. So the word dhikr would mean remembrance, and dhakara would mean remembered. And this is really important, That's why right now we're getting these silly fatawa. It's simply because people don't even know the Lugha Arabiya, and they would think that if they would just have some, surface knowledge of Lugha Arabiya, that they become experts by saying just a few words. Razaqa, which means to provide. Rizq is the actual provision. All right? The actual provision. So here we go. Razaqa, provided. And rizq is the actual provision itself. Now you could see all those beautiful conjugations and how they will, make things easy. But here's one thing. Although I totally understand that sometimes it's like, okay, how do I know if I'm going to use this form of conjugation and not this form of conjugation, meaning fa'al and not fa'ul. Why can't I say hukum, for example? All right. So there's a number of things here. Is that the best way to remember this is by looking and studying those terms. In studying those terms and studying the masdar of it, which is this tense of it, and remembering what the actual words that were chosen are. So it's just different ways. And remember, these rules and these conjugations, they actually came later. So it's not that people had the formula of what the grammar is going to look like, and then said, okay, well, let's base our grammar on the actual idea, and then start applying and making new words. No, the grammar came in order to analyze and scrutinize the way the people in the past were speaking. So the grammar came later, and this is really important to always keep in mind. So it's not that the grammar was set and then people decided, well, let's use this law of what the language should look like and then create words and create sentences based on the law. No, the laws were created later and not the opposite. The laws were created later, and you have to keep that in mind. All right, so the best way to remember is really remember those words. And the good news is that these words are the most common words in the Quran. So if you remember these words, you're pretty much getting 80% of the Quranic words. So work hard on these and remember them, and you'll get there. So let's move on. Let's move on with box 17, just so that we can, inshallah, cover even more with it. So let's see this one. Sorry, sometimes we just have to, deal with different technology. Here we go. So now we're looking at box 17, and in box 17 you've got other commonly used words, sajada, and let's see what it looks like. And sajada, yasjud. Notice that they didn't put you here, this category, but you can figure it out. So sajada, fa'ala is the past tense, yaf'ul is the present, yaf'ul, yasjud, and the imperative is going to be uf'ul. The person is going to be fa'il, and the what's it called, the noun of the verb, or the masdar, remember we said it's going to be fu'ul, or it's going to be fu'l, or it's going to be fi'ala. Now we're adding a new one, fi'ala, or we're going to add fa'al. All right, so those are the sounds that it's going to sound in. All right, so let's see. Sajada, to prostrate. Yasjud, prostrating. And what did I add? I added the ya. Usjud is uf'ul, and it means to give an order and prostrate. Okay, so prostrate. And sajid, the person that does it, which is the person that's making sujood. Sajid is the person that's prostrating. All right, and let's move on. Sujood is prostration. So we're looking at sujood. Remember the actual noun of the verb, sujood, prostration. Okay, sha'ara would mean to feel or felt. My mistake. Felt. Prostrated, felt. Yash'ur, feeling or to feel. And ush'ur, the imperative of it, feel. Sha'ir, the person that's feeling. Slash. Sometimes or many times when we talk about sha'ir, this is not a person that's feeling, but the Arab would use that word to also describe a poet. So when we say sha'ir is not necessarily the person that's feeling, it is more commonly used to mean the poet. Why? Because the poet would have these very deep feelings about something, and where they will be very articulate of it. They will be very articulate of it, and that's why they were called sha'ir, so that they are feeling so deeply that they have been so articulate of it, and therefore they had become poets. All right, so sha'ir is not the person that is feeling deeply, but is basically the poet. Shu'ur, feelings in general. Okay, so remember the root of the verb, felt, to feel or feeling, feel. Poet, shu'ur, feelings. Shu'ur, feelings. Shakara, to thank or thanked. I keep on saying to thank. Shakara, thanked. Yashkur, to thank. Now it's a present tense. To thank or thanking. All right? Or thanking. And ushkur, thank. You're ordering the person thank. Shakir, the person that's thanking. It's always thanking. Shukr is, the actual thanking. So the thanks, I guess. It doesn't make sense in English. Shukr. What do you say in English? Shukr, when you're giving thanks. Yeah, there you go. When you're giving thanks. The actual noun of the verb. Thanked. Sadaqa means to believe. Sadaqa, or, and also to believe and to be true, to be honest. Sadaqa, when a person is honest. So sadaqa means he was honest. Okay? Or he said the truth. Yasduqu, yasduqu, so if I wanted to use the word yasduqu, would mean the person is being honest or the person not. Remember, sadaqa would mean to believe or believed, or it can also mean to be honest or is being honest. Okay? So yasduqu would mean that he is being honest or also is believing. All right? Usduq, believe or be honest. So usduq can mean believe or be honest. Sadiq, and by the way, in the packet, they did actually leave out certain letters like this one, and here they also left the qaf. Usduq means be honest. You're ordering him, be honest. Sadiq, the honest person, the believer, or the honest person. You know, it's talking about the person. Sidq itself, honesty, because the noun of the verb sadaqa, meaning to believe or believed or to be honest, is basically sidq. So sidq is honesty, or sidq is the actual, if you believed, so belief, sidq. Well, no, it can't be belief. Sidq is more like honesty, right? Sidq. And abada. Abada would mean, abada, let's take the one out. I'm going to erase all this so you could now, go into a different mode where you could see it. All right, abada, to worship. My worship, okay? Worship, to worship or serve. All right? So abada, served or worshipped. Ya'bud is worshipping, or is worshipping or to worship. U'bud, you're ordering the person, worship. Abid, the person that's worshipping, the worshipper. All right? Ibadah is the actual worship itself. Ibadah, the actual worship. Fasaqa, to go off track. When we say fasaqa, is really, here it says to transgress, and that's another word of, where you're going. Fasaqa would mean to go off track, to go off the limit that you were assigned to follow. So that would be to transgress, I guess. I'm here defining to transgress. Fasaqa meaning transgressed. Yafsuqu, transgressing. Ufsuq, transgress. You would never tell anybody that, but that's what it means. Fasiq, the transgressor. Fisq, transgression. Yep. Qatala, kill. But here's one thing. By the way, in Arabic, I just want to comment, the word qatala, I believe here it says 93 times. I'm doubting that it came 93 times. I'm assuming it's more. So I'm just going to type in qatala really quick on my phone. It says 47 occurrences. So it says 47 occurrences, but maybe all roots. All roots. Okay, I did it right there. 170 times the word qatala actually came in the Quran with its roots. 170 times. Let's go for the word abada and actually see it in all roots. 275 times. All right, 275 times you had the word abada with its roots coming in. Let's see the word shakara and how many times we got it. In all the roots, 75 times. Okay, let's see the word sha'ara. It's not going to be that many. 40 times. All right. So if you look at the word qatala, I believe we said 200 and something times. But the word qatala, although the word qatala many times can be translated to kill, but that's not necessarily just the meaning, because the word qatala can also mean fight. So it doesn't need to necessarily go to the level of actually, taking somebody's life away. All right. So when we look at qatala, it can also mean to fight, to go against. All right. And here's a question. What about giving charity? Is that a different form of sadaqah? That's a very good, smart question. So let's go back to sadaqah to answer the question. Sadaqah is with a ta marbuta. So it's really like this. Let me make it clear handwriting. All right? Sadaqah. Okay? This is so it would be on, it would basically be, it would basically be fa'ala. All right? Then that would be sadaqah, and it comes from the root sadaqah. That's actually very true. But here, sadaqah would also be the noun of the verb sadaqah, which in this situation, to give in with honesty. To give in with honesty. What are you giving in with honesty in this situation? You're giving a sadaqah to mean to give in with honesty, to give in with good intentions, and that's what sadaqah comes in from. So it's really important. It's so beautiful to actually see how the root of the verb has a whole lot of effect on what the word actually means. So it won't be a sadaqah unless you really are honest with that giving, with that alms that you're sharing. And sadiq and siddiq. So sadiq is the person that is honest or believing. But siddiq, I love that question. I love it. The word siddiq comes from the root sadaqah, but siddiq, whenever you see the shadda, all right, the shadda, or here fi'il, okay, and when you see the form fi'il, that would mean a number of things. The shadda can mean, one, it can mean the gradual, there's something that happened gradually, and can also mean a form of exaggeration. And there are other meanings to it, but this is just really fast. But when we say a form of exaggeration, it doesn't mean that understanding of exaggeration that we have in English, because in English, when you say exaggerated, it is to mean that something is describing in a way where it is what is the word that I could use, but it is not reflecting the reality of it. It is, making something bigger than what it really is. But in Arabic, that form is not necessarily always to mean that it is bigger than what it really is. But it can mean that the person has a repetition. The person has a constant habit of doing that part of that verb. So siddiq in this situation would mean that this person is repetitively, constantly, is consistent in being honest, in being a believer. So siddiq would mean the person that is consistently believing, and they never go off. They're so consistent, they're so firm with it, that they are siddiq. So siddiq, just a beautiful word. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that will have the trait of being siddiqeen and being those honest ones as well. All right, let's continue. Qatala, and like I said, qatala can mean to fight and can mean to kill. So just keep that in mind, because a lot of the Orientalists, there will always be pointing out the word of, fighting and killing and etc., even though the hypocrisy in the Western culture, in where it always points out on the Muslims, even though the Muslims are the ones that are actually being colonized, and all that imperialism is on them. Regardless, qatala to kill somebody or to fight someone. يقتل to or killing, or no, wait a minute. This killed and fought. I need to put it in the past tense. I need to remember that one. يقتل, killing, fighting. اقتل, kill, given an order right here. قاتل, the killer. Okay, or fighter. Remember, it's either to kill or to fight, depending on the context. قتل is the actual killing. قتل is the actual killing or / fighting, because it means both things. All right. قعد is basically to stay, but when we say to stay here, to sit or stay, I'll tell you guys a joke. This joke I was actually reading. This person is saying, my mother's asking me to sit and my wife is asking me to stand. What should I do? So somebody responds and said, just make sujood. And it's like when you're between your mother and your own wife, what should you do? Each one's telling you to do something. Just make sujood. There's no way out. قعد, so to sit. But here's one thing. When we say to قعد, it can be القعود generally, to sit off something. So that is going to determine the meaning in English. So قعد can mean to sit or can mean to remain behind. All right, that's why to remain behind, like the ayah says, لو خرجوا فيكم ما زادوكم إلا خبالا ولا أوضعوا خلالكم. If they would have gone with you, they would have caused disunity amongst you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قيل لهم اقعدوا مع القاعدين, stay with the people that are remaining, the remaining people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want, during the battle of Hunayn, a lot of the hypocrites to join. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them اقعدوا مع القاعدين, not necessarily sit with those that are sitting, but remain behind with those that remained away from the battle. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that was actually not Ghazwat Hunayn, but Ghazwat Tabuk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, sit, we don't want you to join. يقعد, and قعد would mean to remain, or remained behind, or sat. And يقعد, to sit or sitting, or remaining behind. اقعد, sit. اقعد, sit. Okay, you're giving the person an order. قاعد, the person that's sitting. قعود is the actual sitting or the actual remaining behind. كتب, the easiest verb. I wonder how many times the word كتب with all the different roots came in the Quran. That's كتب. 319 occurrences. Wow. 319 occurrences. You gotta not forget that word. كتب, 319 occurrences for the word kataba. And kataba would mean to wrote, because it's the past tense. I gotta keep on remembering. Yaktub, writing or to write. Uktub, write. You're giving him an order. Katib, the writer or author. Kitaba is the actual writing. So the kitaba, the actual writing, or the actual prescription, maybe? No, it can't go. The kitaba is more like, it's not a book, but kitaba is the actual form of writing. The calligraphy, that's more khatbat. Okay. Kafara, here's the word kafara. And I think wait a minute, didn't we explain those ones last week? Kafara, to deny, right? 461 times it appeared. Kafara, to deny, and to also, we talked about that last time. And here in the Quran, I just, looked up the occurrences. Here it says 461 times. I just looked it up on my app and it said 525 times. 525 times. So if it appeared that many times, that means you're raising this percentage. So that's good news. All right, so kafara would mean to deny or to conceal. All right, to deny or to conceal. So what we're denying or concealing here would depend on the context of the verb. Because if we're talking about the farmer, they're concealing the seeds. If we're talking about Muslims, to conceal or to reject. All right. If we're talking about Muslims being kafir of atheism, that means they're rejecting atheism. If we're talking about those that are rejecting Islam, they would be kafir, meaning they're rejecting Islam. But it does not mean infidel. Infidel has I mentioned that before, it has a totally different etymology, and with all the history, biblical references, etc. So kafara would mean to reject here, reject or rejected, all right, or conceal. All right, so concealed or rejected. Yakfur, concealing or rejecting. Ukfur, conceal or reject. Kafir, the person that's rejecting or concealing. Kufr is the actual rejection. So their rejection. Makr, makara, makara. So here, makara, and to plot. Okay? But here's one thing, is that when we talk about plotting, okay, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yamkur, wallahu khayrul makirin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we say plot that refers to Allah, is different than when we talk about it for humans, because humans will plot for the sake of evil, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only plot to bring a good cause. So makara, to plot, or plotted, since it's in the past tense. Yamkuru, plotting. Umkur, plot. You're telling him, you're giving an order. Makir, the person that is mischievous. Okay? But that when we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not evil, so he can't be mischievous, but he will plan. So makir, the mischievous person, the person that's constantly plotting. Makr is the plot itself. All right? Makr is different than kaid, by the way. Okay? You know, when we talk about kaid, it has some differences, because makr is when you are retaliating. You're retaliating for an incident. You're retaliating for something. But kaid, it does not necessarily involve with retaliation, but it can be that you want something to go towards a certain direction, so you will make a plan, a plot, in order to direct the cause to go to a certain direction. That's different than makr, because makr will involve some sort of retaliation. Okay, let's go for nadhara. Got a few minutes left. Oh, alhamdulillah. Yes, we do have the recording, and right now, please subscribe to my YouTube, so we will actually have it on YouTube within probably less than an hour. All right, so nadhara, to look, or looked, because it's in the past tense. Yanzuru, looking. Remember the ya. When you're having a ya, that would mean it's happening in the future or the present tense. Unzur, look. You're ordering the person. Nadhir, the person that's looking. You know, the person that's looking himself. Nadhar is the sight. So nadhar, not sight meaning eyes, but nadhar meaning perspective. And that's, perspective. It's more accurate. So nadhar would mean perspective. So there's that adjective of it. Okay, perspective. Let's go for box 18. And it would be really fun if you would actually take some of those words and actually see how many times do they really go. So all you need to do is go to your app, go to your Quran app, and then punch in the words. And they've got these choices for you. I actually prefer Quran Majid, but there's Ayah. There are so many different apps out there, and you can look for the exact term, the exact verb, or the affixes, or all the roots. That's really fun, to actually look at it. All right, so now we're going to the final one. We've got 5 more minutes, so we could do it, inshallah. Fa'ala, and remember, we just, let me see, no. So this one is yaf'ul, and this one is yaf'al. Slightly different, because they've got the kasra ayn al-fi'l, and here they've got a dhamma and ayn al-fi'l. So be careful with that one, because that's slightly different. Does it have the does it affect the meaning? No, it doesn't. It means exactly the same thing, at least the same cause, the same implication. So this is the present tense, future/future. So daraba, to strike. It doesn't necessarily mean to hit brutally, and this is really important, because when we say daraba, it depends on the word that's connected to it. So daraba fil ard, it doesn't mean that they're striking, they're striking the earth and boom boom boom, they're striking the earth. No, it can actually give the metaphor of it. So daraba fil ard would mean to travel, and you always have to connect it. So the Arab will have certain words that will change. It's kind of like in English when we say driveway, even though that's the area where you park your car, ironically. And when we say parkway, and it's actually the street. But ironically, the parkway is not anywhere you park, but it's actually a street that you pass. But, these things, sometimes it's like, okay, how did they get into those words? So fa'ala, daraba, here it is, strike or hit or tap. Even it can also mean tap. Yadribu, tap. Well, daraba, tapped. Striked, yeah, I'm trying to make that clear. Yadribu, striking. All right, yadribu, striking, tapping, or hitting, beating. It depends on the place and how it appeared and the context of it. Idrib, so idrib, strike. And by the way, in your packet the ba is actually missing, so I did add it on my packet. I will send you this packet edited. So it's not idri, it's actually idrib. They didn't add the ba on that. So idrib, and would mean strike, hit, beat. What else? Yeah. Darib, the person that's striking. Darb is the actual striking / hitting, beating, all that. So any form of, you are raising something and you're striking it back again, that would mean the root daraba. So that's why when the ayah says that, or the hadith, darban ghayra mubarrih, because the word darb would mean any type of tapping. All right, any type of tapping. You could be tapping your legs, you could be tapping your hand. It doesn't necessarily mean to leave a bruise or a mark, or any remaining part, or any pain or breaking things. So that's why ghayra mubarrih would explain it, that that the tap would be light, and does not mean necessarily, when we speak about darb in English, not necessarily will you have the word daraba where it would mean to strike, as you would have the word daraba in Arabic, which can mean different definitions. Hamala, to carry, or carried, to be more precise. Yahmilu, carrying. Ihmil, carry. Hamil, and hamil here, the person that's carrying. But of course, it later came to mean pretty much pregnant women. But it can mean the person that's hamil al-dhikr, it doesn't, the person that's carrying the Quran, etc. So anybody that's carrying something, but more commonly used to mean the pregnant woman. Haml would mean the actual carrying, and many times it can mean the pregnancy. All right. Sabara, to bear with and with patience, but sabara can also mean to hang in there, where you're imprisoning yourself. You are, you're not letting yourself loose. So sabara, you're hanging in there, you're holding on to something. So the person sabara means they were patient. All right, yasbiru, they're being patient. All right, isbir, be patient. Sabir, this person is patient. Sabr, patience. So sabr, patience. Zalama, oppressed. So oppressed, and yadlimu, oppressing. Idlim, oppress. Make sure you don't tell anybody to do that. Zalim, the oppressor. ظلم, oppression. عرف, know or knew, because it's in the past tense. يعرف, to know. اعرف, know. You're telling the person, you gotta know. معرفة. Okay, now you're like, wait a minute. This is a mistake here, because there's supposed to be the word عارف for this. عارف for the فاعل of it, for the person, and for the فعل, for the masdar of it, would be معرفة, or it can even be عرف. So there's a number of masdar for it. All right, so this is a mistake right there. I should have corrected that. All right, عرف, عرف, knew, to know. Know, meaning you're telling person to know. عارف is the person that knows. معرفة is the knowledge itself. But عرف, what people commonly know, which later became the tradition. So عرف, when we say عرف, would come from this, where everybody else knows it. It became a tradition. It's a culture. All right, so here's another part. عقل, عقل. So maybe we will add that later, inshallah. And we can actually do that. So we can do that. You see that this is what I like about. Okay, it doesn't want to. All right. Let's see. Let's continue. And oh no, I guess it doesn't want me to. All right. Really fast. We just want to continue this part, and we've got right here the part in where عقل, عقل, remembered. It can mean, this is a really important one, because it can mean remembered, عقل, meaning remembered, and can also mean to or firmed, or can also mean عقل, عقل, remembered, firm, and عقل can also mean to tie. So when يعقل can mean remembering, firmed or firming, and tying. اعقل, remember, and اعقل, you're telling him to be firm, you're telling him to tie. So اعقل وتوكل, it doesn't mean remember and just let it go, or depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اعقل وتوكل would actually mean, well, just tie that, tie the knot, in other words, tie your camel, and just depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's all you could do. But here, i'qil can also mean, and many times it can mean remember or remembered, and can also mean be firm. So when we say about women that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet said, naqisatu aqlin wa deen, it doesn't mean they lack intelligence. It means that they lack probably memory, or probably firmness. They lack firmness. And that firmness, I mean, maybe because of being too emotional at times. And that's why many times they get taken advantage of, because they're not firm on most of their decisions as men are. Something within a woman's psychology, probably. So, aqil, it doesn't mean that women are not aqilat for sure, but aqil, or sometimes they can be not aqilat, trust me. I've seen many cases, and this is not me being misogynist, but this is with my experience. All right, so aqil would mean a person is firm, or a person is constantly remembering, but this is more of a metaphor, because aqil would mean mature. Okay, so aqil is more of a mature, more of a person that is stable in their thinking. Aql, okay, aql would mean maturity. Aql is maturity, and can sometimes talk about, aql itself, what brings in that maturity, which is remembrance and firmness and wisdom and all that. Ghafara, to forgive, or forgived. And when we say forgived, would mean that the person wiped away the past. In other words, they just let go of the past and moved forward. Yaghfir, forgiving. Ighfir, forgive. غافر. This person is forgiving. So we're talking about the person now. مغفرة is forgiveness. قدر, قدر, to decree. قدر, actually decreed. And يقدر would mean decreeing. اقدر, decree. قادر, the person that has the power to decree. Okay? Qadr and Qudra. Well, here they give you two masdar really, which is the noun of the verb, I know, ironically. Qadr, Qadr would mean the person's status, and Qudra would mean ability. Okay? Qudra, ability. Kadhaba, kadhaba, to deny or to lie. Yakdhibu, meaning lying. Ikdhib, lie. Do not do this at home. Kadhib, liar. Kadhib is blasphemy. You know, kadhib is blasphemy. Kasaba, to provide or earn. Provide? No. Kasaba would mean to earn. So you're getting it. Yeah. Yaks, or earned. Yaksibu, earning. Iksib, go and earn. Kasib, oh, there's a mistake here. You got the bad. Kasib, the person that's earning. Kasb is the actual earning. And could be kasb, could be wealth, could be any type of wealth. Could be cash, could be maybe other things that people consider as wealth. Malaka, malaka, malaka is to own or owned. Owned. Yeah, past tense. Yamliku, owning. Imlik, own. Malik, owner. Milk, ownership. All right, you could see. I hope you guys got the hang of it. We're really. It's good that we're actually letting. Let's say, I just hope that we can actually see how long and how far we have passed. Let's look at it and see how. So we did 63.4%, or here 65%, which is good news. And okay, now we're going into 19 and 20. Okay, 19 and 20, and then 21. And remember, there are 38 boxes, and it will get easier. So now we're gonna go a little bit, far off with different verbs. And those are the verbs, the irregular verbs. The irregular verbs which are the verbs. Oh, this is the fun part. This is the fun part. Those words, look, and then that's it. See, just a few. So hang in there. We're gonna get there, and then we're gonna do that that part where you yourself, you'll be called out to actually do the tafsir. So please remember those words. Take the time to actually work it out, and do it with your family. And then, what is the root? What is the verb? How are you going to conjugate that into the past tense, present tense, the person that's doing it? It's really fun. It's really fun. I'll tell you myself, when I learned Arabic as well, those just fascinated me. Those words, they fascinated me, and how it's conjugated and how the verbs are formed. It just fascinated me. I hope it's fascinating you too as well. So let's see here. Somebody is asking, in Umar series, the Sahaba used the word isbir before going into battle. Is it to be understood as hanging in there or more actively fighting? So isbir would basically mean to be what is the word, but to be strong and be firm, and don't easily give in. Like, don't hesitate, be strong. And here's another question. In naqsatul aql, is that to be taken literally, or because encouraging to give charity? No, naqsatul aql, it's two things. Naqsatul aql, it really literally means that they lack the firmness. And it was also mentioned in the context of encouraging women to acknowledge something that they have a certain weakness of. which at many times, this is not necessarily to be condescending, but there's an actual thing that as women or even as men that sometimes we can be created with something, and that can be our trial. So you can be created with a certain behavior. You can be created with a certain feature, but that feature can sometimes get in the way and may motivate a certain wrongdoing. So in the situation where naqisatu aql, sometimes because of the lack of firmness that women may have, that at many times they may use different methods, they may use different ways to cover up for that weakness or for that lacking firmness that they have, and use different ways to go around with things. Can the lack of firmness be also on the religious side, in where they may not be as firm on their religion as men? It is also possible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet ﷺ, was encouraging women that many times you can lose that firmness even on your faith or even in different decision making. So give up on your dunya by training yourself to give up from that dunya in order to be firm on the akhirah, by giving up from your dunya. So you're training yourself to give up on dunya in order to be firm in wanting the akhirah. And that's the whole dynamic of it, in where everything is connected with another part, in another piece of it, because you may lack the firmness for many reasons, maybe emotional side, maybe you're afraid. We tend to be more afraid of consequences because of our physical fear or physical weakness, etc. And that's why you would find women more hesitant to take courageous steps to probably jump or do, I would say, not necessarily brave moves, but sometimes even we see it even in young boys and girls. We see that the boys are more, whether we agree or disagree, but they're a lot more brave to take dangerous steps than girls. And that comes from that fear. The fear comes in from the lack of firmness. You feel that your body might not be there to give you the support. So by time you would fear brings in lack of firmness and hesitance, and that hesitance comes in the way, and it affects your behavior, it affects your psychology, it affects later on how firm and how determined do I want to be in my decisions in every single step of my life. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered that women would have their wali. Wali would be the person to support, and the wali is supposed to be a male. They tend to be more firm. They tend to be daring to make the decision, and women are usually afraid of the consequence. So when we say lak aql, it's not a condescending thing. It's not a misogynist thing. It doesn't consider that women somehow are lacking humanhood or lacking intelligence. Has nothing to do with intelligence. You can be extremely intelligent but not daring. And it doesn't mean daring is always good, because daring can sometimes also be a negative thing, in where you may not realize the consequence and actually put yourself in dangerous places. That's not wise. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about lacking aql, or the Prophet ﷺ actually in this hadith, lacking aql, to remind women that it can happen that because we lack certain firmness, that we can let our fears control a lot of our behaviors, and then we would give up on akhirah. So in order to be firm in holding on to the akhirah, you got to let go from your dunya. Don't fear. don't fear and don't let fear and don't let your weakness get in the way. So that's where the context comes in. I hope I explained it. And jazakumullah khairan everybody, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here's another question I just noticed. Oh, yeah, I will put in the PDF, inshallah.